This story is about a 37-year-old woman who killed her 3-year-old granddaughter and dumped her body in the bush. Scary thing, right? So it all began on the 4th of October 2022 when Mrs. Udeogu Chinelo, the 37-year-old grandmother of the 3-year-old kid, took the 3-year-old child to enroll her in school. That was an act considered responsible of a grandmother, right? Okay, it looked all good, except that something wasn't just right, and the school authority noticed that there were several marks on the body of the 3-year-old girl. Those marks were suggesting excessive beating, torture, and child abuse generally. They tried to talk about it with Chinelo, but she obviously wasn't pleased that the school authority noticed or observed what had happened to the child. But the school authority was alarmed at the number of marks on the child's body, a 3-year-old child. So they decided to report to NAPTIP, National Agency for Prohibition of Trafficking in Person. And NAPTIP immediately made moves to arrest Mrs. Chinelo. Unfortunately for NAPTIP, they couldn't get Chinelo arrested on that very day. So the next day, the 3-year-old child didn't make it to school, and the school authority believed Chinelo had prevented the child from going to school since she wasn't happy that they had seen the marks on the child's body. So NAPTIP decided to come up with a plan with the school on how to get Chinelo arrested. So they came up with this plan to invite Chinelo to the school to come take up the money she had paid for the child's registration, since she didn't want the child to continue her education there in the school. Now that bit, Chinelo was going to fall for it. When she got the call from the school authority asking her to come take her money, she was glad and she decided to go take her money from the school. Unknown to her, NAPTIP was already in the school positioned to get her arrested. So when she got to the school, in anticipation to get her money back, she met with an already prepared team from NAPTIP, and they began to question her about whom the 3-year-old kid was and about the marks that were seen on the child's body, because the school authority had taken pictures of the child's body, including the marks that were there on her body. So NAPTIP began to interview Chinelo on those marks that were seen, and Chinelo disclosed to them that she had beaten the child because the child defecated in the buckets that they used to beat. And she said while beating the child sustained some injuries from the beating, and the child also started convulsing. So she rushed the child to King's College Hospital in Oka, where the child was sadly declared dead. Now, NAPTIP didn't stop there. They wanted to see the body of the child, the deceased child. So they began to ask her where the body of the deceased child was. They were shocked to hear Chinelo say that she had dumped the body of her 3-year-old grandchild in a bush around INTRIGUE-CREST in Oka. Unbelievable. She dumped the body of her own 3-year-old grandchild in the bush, and she went home like nothing happened. How heartless. Well, NAPTIP decided that she had to lead them to that bush where she had dumped the body of her deceased grandchild. So Chinelo led them to the bush where the body was, and truly there in the bush was the body of the deceased 3-year-old grandchild of Chinelo in a black nylon bag. The body was already decomposing. at the time Naptip got there. They wanted to be sure that that child was truly hers, as she claimed was her grandchild. So they asked her more questions. And Chinelo said her 19 years old daughter had given birth to the child 3 years ago, but she abandoned the child with her. So she claimed she had been the one taking care of the child since then. And I'm like, hello, you've been the one abusing the child since then, not taking care of the child. The pictures of the child we saw didn't look like a child that was being taken care of. It looked like a child that had been subjected to all sort of torture. It is sad to hear that the perpetrator of such evil to that child was her own grandmother. How horrible. Well, Naptip did not hesitate to arrest Chinelo, and she was handed over to the police in Awka by Naptip. At this point, I really want to applaud that school. The authority of that school deserve all the applause because they did a very good job. I mean, another school would have turned a blind eye, but this school authority did what any responsible institution should do. They reported to the relevant authority, and all thanks to Naptip for also not relenting, for following through with this matter even when they couldn't reach Chinelo to arrest her. I mean, they could have given up, but no, they made sure they got to the root of it all. It's really, really refreshing knowing that there are institutions, there are schools, there are people who are still doing the right things in the society, people who are still taking their jobs seriously, people who are still taking lives very, very sacred as it should be. We really applaud that school. We do not have their name, but if you know their name, please tag them and let other schools learn from such acts of care and protection that they showed this little child, even though it's unfortunate that they couldn't save the child's life, but they tried as much as they could. At this point, I would like to say that if the school knew the address of the child, they probably would have saved her life, even though they tried as much as they could. But this is also to say that schools should ensure that they get the right address for their pupils whenever they register them in their schools. If possible, there should be a staff that is assigned that duty to get to know the house of that student from the very day of their registration in school. I strongly believe that if they knew the house of that little child, they would have saved her life on that day. And they probably would have arrested Chinelo earlier than they did. It is unfortunate that that little child died in a horrible manner by the same woman who was supposed to protect her. So guys, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to this channel and don't fail to turn on your notifications so you'll be the first to know when next we upload a story. If you enjoyed watching this video, please like it, leave a comment below on your thoughts concerning the story, and don't fail to share this video. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of your mental health, take care of your emotions, be kind to yourself, be kind to the people around you, and always be safe. I remain Dorcas Ige Olubokun, and I love you all.